Hello, I'm Michael Redmond, professional 9-dango player. In this video, I'll be looking at a game between Honinbō Sansa and Rigen. So for those of you who want to get into the game already, I'm showing a position where black has jumped out into the center with a Keima. So the question is, why could black connect out with this move? And why didn't white push through and cut? So I'll be talking about that later in the commentary. And you can think about that while I introduce the game. So this was the dawn of the golden era of Go, and I'd like to start by explaining why I say so. Japan had been in a period of unrest and widespread conflict for centuries. The war had started with the Onin War in 1467, and after that there was a period of a feudal era called the Sengoku period. In the year 1600, Japan was finally united under the rule of Tokugawa Ieyasu. And this started the Edo period, which was an era of relative peace and stability. And it lasted about 250 years under the rule of the Tokugawa shogunate. Ieyasu was a patron of the arts, and he fostered a culture of renaissance, establishing the Ieyasu system to preserve and transmit traditional crafts and skills. And one of those arts that had the Ieyasu system was Go. Ieyasu was a skilled Go player himself. He's said to have received a 5-stone handicap from the leading Go masters of his time. Now to go on to introduce the players. Honinbō Sansa was a Buddhist monk, and he was the strongest player of his time, so from the late 16th to the early 17th century. And he founded the Honinbō school, laying the groundwork for professional Go in Japan. So that was the first Ieyasu school that was created. Sansa also became the first Meijin, and he received official recognition and financial support from the shogunate. His opponent, Rigen, was a contemporary and a rival of Honinbō Sansa. They often competed in notable games. They played in the presence of the leaders of the country, things like that. Rigen founded the Hayashi school, and his disciple, Hayashi was the first leader of that school. Some people might recognize the names. These two players were associated with the story of a triple ko, occurring during a match on the evening of the incident at Honnō-ji. So there's a video about that, and I'll include a link in the video description. Sansa's playing style had fast development and a focus on positional advantage, while Rigen tended to favor a more solid and territorial approach. Okay, I'll start the game now. Okay. And this pincer was popular throughout the Edo era. So for hundreds of years, it was still being played in the 19th century when Shusaku was the strongest player. And this joseki also was a popular joseki for hundreds of years. In this case, the position of white's stone on the side is slightly problematic. It's probably not in the most efficient place. And white pincered here. So I'd say the normal way for white to play would be to jump here, making miai of covering at R14 and pincering on the top side. So if something like this happens, it might have been easier for white to have played that exchange first before pincering on the top side. So when white pincers at 5, the kakari in the top left corner and surrounding black on the right part of the top side. Those two areas are sort of miai, so it makes this playable for white. Of course, the game is without komi, so black does have an advantage. So jumping here was a big move, and it was efficient because for the time being it makes it very difficult for white to surround those black stones on the top side. So white tried to surround black with this move. It was an option to focus more on strengthening white's group on the top, or on the right, you might say. So playing here, that would strengthen white's group by elevating it above the black group. And white, after black moved out, white could take the Kakari. So it would be a kind of a smooth trade there. And if black pushed, so something like this, white would be able to play on both sides. So this would be a relatively good variation for white. In the game, white tried to surround the black group, and black jumped out here. So this is the position I showed you at the beginning of the video. And it turns out black is safe enough with this move. So the question is, what if white pushes through here and cuts? So obviously not this way, because black would just push down the O line and capture that stone. So that's obviously not working. It's a bit less obvious why this is not going to work. So black has various ways to continue the fight, but the cleanest win is to play here and connect up on the side. So if white tries to stop that, it becomes the stone pillar squeeze. So that makes this fun. Black can cut here and play here. And white has to defend the two stones on the O line. So if white plays here, this is going to be a double Atari. And black's going to capture one of the two sets of stones. So either the two stones on the left or the three stones on the right. They're both in Atari. There's no way to get out of it. So white has to connect here. Capturing the one stone is bad because black captures two stones here. So after white connects, this is where black plays the extension here to make the stone pillar shape. And this is going to be a collapse. So the whole white group just dies. Connecting on the second line here is good enough. If white backs off and plays something like this, black has connected, so the territory is big, and also that stone in the center, black's still cutting there, so white has to play something like this. I suppose black would either play here, or black could play a ladder breaking Kakari in this corner also. So either way, this looks good enough for black. So in the game, white did not cut. This was also an active move. White could have jumped here and played a Kakari. Something like this might be the continuation. White would then have to defend the top side. So white attached here and black played here. This is where, at some point, if white had played here, it would have been a relatively peaceful variation. Black would probably play here or here. If black plays here, it's guaranteed to be forcing, so white would probably answer with one of the... And then black could play a pincer. So that would be black's plan. But it would be relatively safe. So pushing here was a very strong fighting move. But there was some danger. So in the game, black jumped here. But if black had played here, it would have been a much more dangerous variation for white. So if white extends, then black can extend here. In this variation, black can actually play an Atari here. And if white pushes through on this side, black can still live in the corner. So that Hanetsugi at Q18, that's going to be forcing. So black has enough room to live. A fight, something like this, might continue. So if white extends down here, now it becomes difficult for white to capture those black stones. So black would connect here. And this looks like it's going to be a rather difficult fight for white. So white might play here, black would curl around here. So that was a stronger way for black to play. Black played the relatively safe move here. So slightly passive maybe. And then the Shimari. So this is pincering the white group. Another option would be to play a Hane in the center. This is also a vital point, making a strong position in the center of the board. So something like this. And yes, so black curled at 7 to get Sente and play at 9. And after this, the play will sort of shift to the lower side probably. Black does have territory in the top two corners. So it's close enough to an even game. So in the game, black played the Shimari and white jumped out in the center. So after this, white's groups on both sides are fairly safe, and black's group is out in the center also. So both sides are safe for the time being. There is one thing that I found interesting was that when I researched with Karago, almost throughout the game, it was suggesting that both players had to play this point. So the Hanesugi here is because of the fact that black's group on the side is not safe yet, it's a forcing move. So white's probably going to answer it like this. This exchange would be good for black in that it would reinforce the corner. So it would make the size of black's corner territory much larger. And it would also actually be helpful in making eyes, because at any point black can play here. So if we look at a position something like this, you can see how that covering at 5, it does help black make eye space. So there's actually more potential for eyes for black when we compare it to the game move was here. So at some point, if white plays here, this is going to be forcing, threatening to jump in at S18. So black has to answer that. And it becomes a bit of a problem when black tries to make eyes on the top side. For instance, let's just play a random move here. For instance, if black plays this move to try to get some eye space, it's going to be damaging to the corner territory. So the value or the quality of black's position in the corner is going to degenerate. So that's why Q18 was an important point. And so I think already Karago was suggesting black should play that. Probably the moment white plays here. And throughout the middle game, it was always suggested. In the game record, it was played by white much later in the game, so it was maybe a bit tardy. Okay, so black jumped out, and white played here. So this is going to introduce us to some joseki in attacking the Ogemashimari, and so this was played already then, and is still valid that when white plays at C14, white is usually aiming at the C17 attachment. And there are some cases when white is aiming at D17, but that's more true when there's a white stone at H17. So white needs the stone closer for this invasion to work. And when it's just this stone at C14, it's usually this invasion. So we're going to see that in action. Black played an extension, and white plays this kakari. So this was a kakari that it was actually liked by Go Seigen, and so it still works in modern Go, although you don't see it so much with the AIs. So it's making miai locally of an extension here, a 2-space extension, and the attachment in the corner. So that fight will happen a bit later, because black just left it for now and played a capping move. So when black caps here, it does make a difference to what's going to happen in the corner. And we'll see that too. So black reinforced the group on the top side, and black is looking at the possibility of attacking this white group, the white group on the O line here. It doesn't have a base yet, and black is looking at looking for an opportunity to attack it. By creating a position in the center with these two stones, black is sort of cutting off this white stone and preparing to attack it. So we see an attack sort of slowly developing here. And white attached in the corner. So from the point that white played at C14, this move here, white was aiming at the 3-3 point there. And the variation black played is one basic variation. If black extends here, this sort of reverts to a position where if black had played a star point in modern Go, and white had played a kakari at C14 and black had answered at F17, this would have been a very common or popular joseki. So it's sort of reverted to that position where white has invaded at the 3-3 point. So it's the same sequence. White plays a hanetsugi and slides here. So some people might recognize this variation from games they've seen in modern Go, or games that they've played themselves. It was slightly weak for black in this position where black had a supporting stone here at e14. Black could have played a bit stronger, so I'll explore that now. A stronger move for black would be to cover on the third line. Yes. So if black covers here, there's in a way, this stone on the fifth line here, it's supporting black against the cut. So if white cuts here, it's very awkward for these two white stones to escape. So that's how this is working for black. And white might extend down here. This would be a way for white to try to live in the corner. And again, black can cover here. So if white cuts, it's still looking difficult for white when black does this. So the stone at e14 is participating in this fight. Maybe white will just play here. And white can live in the corner. So the value of this variation is that black gets to play at 9, which is a key point in shape. And let's see, white could... black's looking at L16 next. So say something like this happens, white will eventually have to defend there. And it's a more efficient way for black to reinforce this group. So black could continue somewhere in the center and have an attack against white's group on the top side. So this was slightly weak. The game did get very close after this. Okay, so they played this way. Black is still thinking of attacking white on the top side, although white is starting to get some eye space. So I guess it's safe enough now, but black also has an attack against white's group on the left side. So black is kind of making a splitting attack here. And white moved out. So if white had not done so, black would have been able to surround the white group. And so black would be attacking white in the center and on the left side simultaneously. So maybe both groups would live, but it would probably, black's plan would be to make a strong position and then switch to lower right, in which area black still seems to have some potential to attack. So it would be a series of attacks that black was setting up. So white moved out, and black extended here. So black finally got to play that kakari. The way they played the corner, it's very similar to a modern Go Joseki. It's good for white to kick in this case. So white kicked at c4 because the black group is not safely alive yet either. So it does put some pressure on the black group to kick here. And playing low on the third line here, it's working because there's already a black stone there at J3. So the black stone on the third line, if white had played something high like this, say here, and here, it would have been relatively difficult for this white group in the lower left corner to have a base, to have a living shape. And so it's important that white has a living group there, which is what white created in the game position. Okay, so here white is trying to link up with the center. If white had played a slow move like this, black would have jumped in between the two white groups. So with this move, white is attacking the large knight shape that black has. And when black reacts, it does help white link up to the center. So white is linked up to the center at this point, and black had sente. So what black gained from this whole fight was that black got a small territory on the left side, and so black took away white's potential area on the left side. If we just go back, say this much, there was some potential for white to build an area on the left side. So by invading there and getting a group there with a territory of something like 10 points, that was black's local profit. And then black had sente to move to the lower right corner. So white extended. If black had played from the other side, then the joseki would be for white to play here. And the joseki would be for white to cut here. So this is the basic joseki. And if we continue, it would usually be something like this. In this game, white probably wants to curl around. And if something like this happens, white's getting a good territory on the right side too. So it would be a trade of the lower side for white's territory on the right side. So black played this way, making use of this stone. Although white did get a 2-space extension, black is making use of this stone as a kind of a pincer. Okay, so black is continuing the attack on the bottom side, and with this move, white is pretty much alive. So one way to sort of judge the life or death of groups is that when you start to have something that looks like 8 points on the third line, or it could be kind of vertical pointing towards the center, but when you have this kind of 8-point shape, it's usually good enough to be alive. So when white had the 2-space extension on the third line, white was getting close, but with these 2 kosumis on the second line, white is finally looking fairly safe. And black played down here. So at this point, if black had covered here, white probably would have jumped into the corner. So these 2 points are sort of miai. And so instead of doing that, black plays this way. And with this move, it's starting to put pressure on white's group in the corner. So if white plays away, then black could play here. And these 2 points, black might actually start with something like this. And black would have an extra move towards the right side. Or if white answered on this side, black would be able to attack the corner fairly strongly. So it was an indirect attack against white's group on the side, threatening a double attack here. So white answered this way, connecting up. And black extended here. So here black is starting to make some territory in the center. It's still true that this point was a very important point. And at any point in the game, if black had played this, Katago's evaluation would always give black a lead, while if white plays it, it's a bit more ambiguous. So white played here now. And this was forcing at any time. So white probably should have played it earlier. And but it's sort of timed at a time where white is starting to think about attacking black in the center of the board. So this black group on the top, it's problematic for black to try to make 2 eyes for this group. So I think if black really needed to, he could make 2 eyes, but it would be a bit painful. So that means that the connection here can become an issue. So black tried to fix it with sente, and that was probably a dangerous move. This would still be a winning diagram that Katago showed me. So black playing like this. Playing at 1, it's keeping a little patch of black territory in the center there. And of course it keeps the connection. So it's a thick move, you might say, a very solid move. So playing something like that in the center, this jump or maybe this move, would have been a very solid way to play. While the game was slightly makeshift, and jumping here, and the attachment here was a good shape. And black pushed here. So this, at this point, black still had a small lead if he had just covered here. So this would secure a territory in the corner and make up for the fact that black's slightly weak towards the top side. And a sequence like this, where black would start to surround the center. So for instance, if white plays here, black would play a hane and get some territory in that part of the center too. And black does have a small advantage. So this was a big move. Maybe the lower right corner was bigger. White could not really play here. Black would be able to cut some white stones off. So for instance, if black plays here and here, black would capture 3 white stones. So it was correct for white to answer like this, and black got some territory on the second line. So it was a big move. And white plays here. So at this point, black's group in the center, it has to run out. The game record stops here. So this is how far the game record went. According to the record, white won the game. And at this point in the game, it is starting to look like white might have a small lead. It's actually very close. So it's also not clear that black has any good move locally. So we'll look at that. So for instance, if black plays here, white will cover, and black can cut. But cutting is not going to be good. So this is another example of how it's not really good for black to try to make 2 eyes there, because white will play here. And black has 1 eye, but so for instance, maybe black will have to play this one too, and black can play here. So something like this. So black has 1 eye on the M line, and a potential eye if black plays it, for instance, O19 or P19, black can make a second eye there. And also black can make an eye here. So it's not going to die, but it is a bit painful. So that's why, just because black is losing some points in the corner and stuff like that. And 4 and 6, that was big too. So it's probably better for black to escape into the center. Okay, so let's look at that. Black can connect up in the center, but the lower right area is going to sustain some damage. And in this variation, Katago's evaluation has white winning by a small margin, a couple of points or something like that. So the game record does give white a win, although it was incomplete. So that was the game between Rigen and Honinbō Sansa. Strictly speaking, it wasn't a castle game, although they did play games in the presence of the shogun, that would be Tokugawa Ieyasu, or other lords who were sponsoring them. And they did spend some time in some of the castles and some of the residence of the lords. So at this point in history, the castle games were not systemized, and so they were not scheduled, and the yearly schedule that was used later in the Edo era. So I'll be talking about those schedules in some other games that are more relevant. Although some of these games between Rigen and Honinbō Sansa were included in the collection of castle games, which I'm using as one of my sources. So I will continue making videos of these historical games from the golden era of Go, and taking you through the history of the Go players who played all these fantastic games. So thank you for watching, and thank you to my supporters at Patreon who are supporting me and helping me make these videos.